Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the Thursday 4 o'clock News and Politics Hour. We've got a good one for you, as we usually do. Kick off at 4 o'clock with former state representative, former Deputy Secretary of State, now heads up Stages of Freedom. Ray Rickman will be here to give his big view.
Hello everybody. Yesterday, in a kind of weirdly beautiful rain, Rob Demick and I went down to Warren, went across 195, turned into Barrington and drove down. And it was just a wonderful experience because we went to the Warren Monument Company. They're the second oldest monument company in America, not in Rhode Island, in America. We'd been down to John Stevens stone cutting in Newport 6 months ago when we got this idea to create a gravestone for Ciceretta Jones. Before Aretha Franklin, before Diana Ross, before Lena Horne, before anybody, there was Ciceretta Jones, the first famous black female singer in America and the first black woman to be able to make a living as a performer in this country. And she lived on the side of College Hill off of Benefit Street. She was a diva extraordinaire, dressed, met the royal family of Great Britain, the Kaiser of Germany, 4 United States presidents she performed for at the White House. What a career. She lies in an unmarked grave in Grace Cemetery. I found out that 25 years ago, and I made a commitment that she would have a gravestone. And you know how commitments are. Life gets in the way. But Maureen Lee, in the meantime, she wrote a biography. We became good friends. We've been back and forth. We've done 7 programs together. And every time Maureen Lee says, let's get a gravestone for Ciceretta. This is her anniversary, 150th birthday anniversary. And on June 9th of this year, she will have a gravestone carved by, made by Warren Monument Company. Stone from Barre, Vermont, the best stone you can get. Expensive. 200 people have donated so far. We need another 24. So consider this an ask. But I'm not really just telling you about Ciceretta Jones and her unmarked grave. I'm telling you about the Warren Monument Company. Standing there in the rain, in that space behind the Warren City Hall, this ancient business, probably 3 or 4 employees, I should have asked. And not only that, while we were there, the Barre, Vermont truck came. Had to be 60 feet long. It's got stones in it, and it's busy delivering them, granite stones. It brought 4 to them to be carved. Be carved. Ciceretta, her granite stone, to be carved by the Warren Monument people. And I thought to myself, why isn't Commerce working with these 500 or 600 unique, craft, skilled Rhode Island companies to get them to hire an extra employee or 2 or 3 instead of giving our money to Johnson & Johnson to get them to hire 50 people? Wouldn't 2 more people in Warren like to work at that fabulous stone cutting company, and they could walk a mile or 2 miles from work like in the old days when you walked to the mill, but this time you would walk to a place where you'd be paid well and respected. The second oldest monument stone cutting company in America.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for 4 o'clock for news and politics. We had Ray Rickman give his big view, as we do most Thursdays. And a number of Thursdays we've had in the RIDOT's Ripple Effect campaign. This is to raise awareness for impaired driving. We've had a number of folks in here, from law enforcement to healthcare professionals, and we have with us a survivor. Becky Bowman-White, you've been out there telling your story, letting folks know what you went personally through as impacted by a drunk driver. So I thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
So, talk with us for folks who might not know your story. Let's start with both the accident and the aftermath.
Sure. So I was involved in a drunk driving crash in October 29th, 1999, and I was involved in a crash with my mother, Marcia Bowman, and my best friend, Katie DeCubulis. We were on Route 4 heading north to the Warwick Mall at the time, and a drunk driver rear-ended our car, pushing us into oncoming traffic. From that crash, we were propelled into oncoming traffic across the median, and our car was hit. And from that, I survived, but sadly, my mother and Katie passed away. And from that crash, I began publicly speaking when I was in middle school and in high school and in college. I took a few years off, and now I'm back talking about my experience. And when Dante approached me with the Ripple Effect and the campaign in Rhode Island, I was more than happy to help in any way possible for preventing drunk driving in our state.
And here we are, we've had so many folks come in to talk with us, and as someone so personally impacted, what do people come up to you after you speak and talk to you about? Because it's just so personal and it's so heart-wrenching. What do you hear from folks after you give these speeches, when you have the ability to talk with folks after?
So I mainly speak with high school, middle school kids, and I'm surprised by the reaction I get from them, because it's typically a tough crowd to wrangle in and listen for 45 minutes, but they're always very respectful, and they realize it's a real story in their own state and it could happen to them. And sadly, there are many other kids that have been impacted by drunk driving, whether it's a cousin or a relative, and they share their stories with me, and they thank me for coming to their school, and they appreciate my honesty in that, seeing how they can overcome such a tragedy in their life, whether it is drunk driving or even just addiction, whether it's alcohol or drug addiction that they're facing in their family or personally. So usually the outpouring is very respectful and appreciative of whenever I share my story.
And you talk about talking with the youth, and you talk about overcoming. From your personal standpoint, having to overcome, do you think it's when kids are that young and they're not they see drinking, they see drugs in middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. How important do you think that it is for them to hear again the impacts that impaired driving actually has on people?
It's really important, especially nowadays, mainly with media and them having access to their cell phones 24/7, seeing Twitter, seeing Instagram, and seeing all what I like to say not good role models constantly, and it's important for them to realize, people do make bad mistakes, and there's a reason why their health teachers and programs like mine and programs like the Ripple Effect exist, because we don't want people to make the same mistake twice and to learn from others' mistakes. So it's just important for them to hear the message, and I think they are, and I'm very hopeful. I've always been very hopeful in this topic and realm. People always ask me, do you think drunk driving will be eliminated someday? And my answer is always yes, because with campaigns like the Ripple Effect, but also I feel that there is a little bit of a change going on in our culture, and just like smoking was many years ago, it changed. I feel that drunk driving is getting there, and with also Uber and other ways to get around, people can make a plan before they leave their house, and if they're going to be drinking, they can set a plan before they even leave their house to take alternate routes.
And so you bring up another point I was just going to raise again, having those options and putting them in place before you're in a position where you might be impaired to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And I've talked with other professionals as well when they're in here too, is the importance of keeping an eye on friends and family members and not being afraid to say something if you're not the impaired one. I'm sure you talk about that with kids all the time too.
Yeah, it's whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, it doesn't matter. It's always a hard conversation to be in when you see someone you know that is impaired and is going to make a bad choice to step in, but you have to, because you need to think about the after effect, and you don't want to lose them, or you don't want them to make a bad choice and getting in their car and causing a crash and hurting someone else. So it's a hard decision, but you have to do it. If you see it, say something or call the police. They'll always step in and help too. So.
And giving this talks at you as you go around and you talk with media, again, part of this campaign too, part of it must be keeping the memory of your mother and Katie alive.
Of course. You know, I miss them with every breath I take, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about Katie and my mom. But you know, I survived for whatever reason, and I always feel that the reason for that is they want me to live a happy and healthy life. So that's the way I choose to be, and I'm a better person for it. And I have a very strong faith. So my faith is that I'll be able to see them again one day.
So as part, again, of the ripple effect, it's the DOT's campaign to really show the impacts of impaired driving. And for you to come and tell us your story, to go around the state and tell the story, is incredibly strong and brave of you. I very appreciate it. And I appreciate Dante Bellini and the DOT bringing people right here to the studio, because we see the numbers, they're out there, but you have faith that this can be addressed and really, really stopped. Well, we've got those links to the ripple effect, but Becky Bowman-White, I really appreciate your taking the time, because the impacts of impaired driving don't just affect you, they affect everyone. Again, thank you for taking the time to come in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for a very political day here. We were at the State House, and no bigger political news here in the city of Providence than the newest announced mayoral candidate, Bob DeRobio. Thank you for taking the time to come in today.
Thank you for having me, Kate.
I know it's been a busy day since you kicked off this morning at the Old Rhode Island State House. You've been on the campaign trail already. Let's talk a little bit, before we even go into today's speech, about your decision to enter the race.
Well, my decision to enter the race was because I've been a resident of Providence for 62 of my 72 years, and you feel that Providence is just not going in the right direction for everyone. You have issues regarding school systems, and you have issues regarding the physical structure of the city. You have the pension liability, you have the medical liabilities, you have homelessness, you have traffic cameras, you have a number of things that are just affecting the city that people are just not happy about.
And so you kick off this week, and earlier this week, the mayor just gave his budget address for the coming year. What's your sense of the true fiscal position of the city of Providence as we stand here?
Well, obviously, you know, Providence is a tale of two cities. It's one city shows a sign of being prosperous and wealthy, and we can afford everything, and people can send their students to their kids to private schools. But I don't believe everybody lives in that part of the city. I believe people are really struggling. And when you look at the idea of the traffic cameras, where is the greatest impact of those traffic cameras? But in the sections of the city that can least afford to pay the fines for those traffic cameras. I mean, 20,000 tickets, and it's unbelievable what's happening here.
Well, it's still on hiatus as the legal proceedings are moving forward. Court dates have been postponed. We just got the email. The traffic cameras, you talk about the tale of two cities. Let's talk about this morning, because your speech did focus so much on education. How can the city improve the education system?
It's my belief that education stems from putting students in the correct environment to learn. The correct environment is not an environment that has leaky roofs, that floods during rainstorms, that has poor facilities, poor structures. I believe that you've put them in the right environment, they are going to progress and they are going to be the types of students that we're going to be proud of. And the teachers working in those conditions are going to give the best effort possible.
Well, we have seen a little bit of a give and take between the teachers and the city looking for a raise. Again, looking at the city's fiscal condition, and we've heard from the mayor this week, let's talk about the pension liability. That's the
Pension, yeah.
that's the elephant in the room always in terms of the true fiscal condition of the city of Providence. I mean, how can this begin to be addressed? It's been ongoing for years. This is not a new problem. It seems that every elected official manages to push it along.
Right.
When does it stop?
Two ways. One, if the city ever declares bankruptcy, and the other, if the city ever clears up the pension issue. So, we are definitely not on the side, or I'm not on the side of the city declaring bankruptcy, because there's too much to give. There's too much here. There's too much enthusiasm in making Providence great. Providence should be the bellwether for the state. The governor should be proud of presenting Providence to new businesses that are coming into the state. Instead, as mentioned in several political pieces, it's being used against her as a campaign because there's so much crime in the city and there's so much violence, and it's becoming a negative rather than a positive for her. The other issue is, you have to sit down and negotiate with the unions in particular and look at contracts that are forward contracts, not trying to penalize people that have already reached their retirement benefits, and contribute more money towards the pension system.
And so you talk a little bit about other issues facing the city as well, the issue of crime. How can we better address that here in the city?
I believe that crime is associated with some of the things that are happening with the licensing board. It's like if you pay the appropriate amount of money, you can keep your place open until 2 a.m. And then if you want to get around that issue, you just hire a contractor and keep it open until 5 a.m. And then those people are out on the streets. Where do they go? But, become a source of crime. The other is the part about recreation centers. There just aren't enough good facilities available to keep the students, to keep the kids off the street on weekends and give them something positive to do.
And so you talk about the board of the licensing board, which we've covered quite extensively here. So if you were mayor, I mean, would you just go and shake that up?
Yes, I would. Totally, totally. And make sure that the businesses that are applying for licenses have to come through the city to provide the appropriate protection and to provide the appropriate supervision from that time period of 12 midnight to 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning.
And so one of your campaign proposals as well is really good government in terms of lobbying, maybe, if you will.
Lobbying to the extent that you can't work in a city office and then become a lobbyist and turn around and sell things back to the city and be making $50,000 salary because of who you know or because of the I know a guy type attitude. That has to go. There has to be a pledge saying that once you are employed by the city, that you cannot use that as a stepping stone to become a lobbyist, at least until I leave office.
Does this pertain to the speed cameras, perhaps?
Definitely.
Might pertain to the speed cameras. Well, clearly they've been looking at it as a revenue grab. I mean, they've been making a lot of money since the hiatus. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to make it work, or is there not, in your opinion?
Well, I believe that if there's a desire to put them back, and I'm not a strong advocate for putting them back, I believe in more of a physical presence on the street to stop speeding rather than a speed camera that you have very little control over. But if they do go back, there has to be proper, I want to say proper indoctrination, proper overview to the members of the community. They have to work together on where they go and what times they are going to be utilized, and what the effects of the community are. We just can't be ticketing people who can least afford to pay those tickets. So it's just a downward spiral in the city.
Speaking of the city, we've got the Superman building looming just on the other side of the camera. We oftentimes point to it. You know, as most folks say, as Providence goes, so goes the state. But a lot of times, as Superman goes, so goes the city. What's the best and highest use between Providence working with the state to see that building not darkened as it has been for the last several years?
One of my campaign posters that has my picture, in fact, you have it as part of your street scene there, has the Superman building lit up. And one of my consultants said, you know, that building is dark, it's not lit. And it prompted me to say, at the end of my first term, that building will have lights going on in it. Everything possible will be done to get people, to get a business in there, and to make it one of the shining stars of the city of Providence. It's not a 46-foot skyscraper.
That's my next question.
It's not that, but it's a beautiful building, and it is a symbol of the city of Providence.
You got ahead of my skis here as I was now looking backwards to the 195 land. As we know, the 195 Commission is going through their process, but does have to work with the city of Providence. And we saw last night the proposal go before the City Plan Commission for a variance because it is well outside the constraints of what is currently on the books.
Well, higher is better.
So talk with us about your thoughts on that. You've seen the renderings, you saw the reaction that was there last night. What's your thoughts on this Fane Tower?
As a single building within that place, you know, it certainly is not going to be, to me, the most attractive type building in the city. If there's a long-range plan of putting 6, 7, 8 structures surrounding it that complement one another, then certainly there's room to negotiate and say, let's look at the variances. But on its own, I would rather have 6 Superman buildings in the city of Providence rather than one 48-story building.
Well, we'll see what happens with Fane moving forward. We are keeping the eye on 195. But let's talk about the land in the city. We do know so much, over 40%, is held by nonprofits.
And that's certainly an area that can help solve some of the pension crisis too, in looking at the colleges and universities and asking for greater contributions from them for the services that the city is already providing them. I think that that's one area. The second area, as I stated earlier, is looking at any future negotiations on contracts to try and draw more money to pay for that, to help pay down the pension issue. The third might be to pay the pension payments on time rather than showing that the city has a surplus and then making your payments into the system.
So you've been keeping an eye on that leisure sheet.
I have.
Well, GoLocal contributor Michael Riley often writes on that issue. We've been featuring it here as well. So we've kind of gone through a rundown of sort of the big issues, the campaign kickoff from today. Bob, what's next?
To get out there, to meet as many people as possible, to get into the neighborhoods, to shake their hands, to listen to their concerns, and to try and give them a feeling that there is a voice that is going to speak out for them and is going to listen to them and is going to address their concerns.
Well, Bob DeRobio, I appreciate you taking the time to come in today after a big, busy kickoff event that took place this morning. I'm sure we'll have you back in soon.
Thank you very much.
Bob DeRobio, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
I'll let you go off to the campaign trail. Okay. Bob DeRobio made the official announcement this morning. He has tossed his hat in the ring for Providence Mayor. Talked with him a little bit about his views on education, crime, economic development, 195 and Superman, and more. I appreciate his taking the time to come here into GoLocal to talk politics. It's been a political day. We kicked off at 3 o'clock at the State House. Majority Leader Joe Shikarchi, representing District 23 in Warwick, not interested in running for mayor of Warwick now that Scott Evedizian is heading to RIPTA. Made that announcement today on GoLocal. We'll have that up so you can read as well. Senator James Sheehan was on with us talking about his legislation to look at the magistrate process. Wants to revamp it and revise it so that it's a merit-based selection process, not an appointment-based one. We talked with him about that up at the State House and then came back here. We had Ray Rickman, former state representative, give his big view. And then we had the RIDOT, Becky Bowman-White, in studio to talk about the ripple effect, her own story of being a survivor of drunk driving and talking with the youth about the importance of making good decisions. So we appreciate your watching. We'll be back tomorrow at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center with more live. We look forward to seeing you. Wish everyone a good Thursday evening. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.